How you doing, folks? It's Thursday night. It's 8 p.m. You know what that means. It's time for your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. We got so much to talk about this week because another forbidden door may be opening, and this one has a lot of potential. We're talking TNA and NXT. We're going to get into that tonight. We had bunches of shows last weekend between King and Queen of the Ring and Double or Nothing from AEW, so we got to touch on those two, and who knows all what else. Stay with us, folks. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast starts right now.
Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt. All I really want is that Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really need that Big Gold Belt.
Thanks for being with us here tonight, folks. It's your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast, live each and every week, 8 p.m., streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, X, you name it, and of course at Big Gold Belt, biggoldbelt.com/live. You can find us all over the place. Glad you're here with us. We got a lot to get into because this has been kind of an eventful week, and surprisingly, Tuesday came out of nowhere with some surprises, and I think that's part of the story is I didn't hear none of this coming. This was like, totally out of left field, which I think made it even more fun than it would have been kind of having a little, thinking that maybe something was a brewing. But Tuesday night on NXT, old HBK Shawn Michaels, he's changed his profile picture on X currently. He got the old chef outfit out because he was cooking up some stuff Tuesday night. I think we're going to get right into it because there's some exciting stuff going on in wrestling, and we got the guys here tonight. We got Two James up there to my left. We got Giant Crab Jamal down there at the bottom left, and of course Silly Celis below me on the bottom right. Guys, you all had a good week this week, I hope.
Oh yeah.
Indeed.
Just busy.
I hear you. There's a lot going on. It's a busy time of year as we get close to summer. So let's talk about NXT Tuesday night, because out of nowhere, we had two very eventful things happen. We had one, Roxanne Perez out there to talk about how she needs a challenger for Battleground and how she's a dominant NXT women's champion. And then lo and behold, out of nowhere, who shows up to challenge Roxanne Perez but Jordan Grace, the Impact Wrestling knockout. I guess what TNA guy. I always put it as TNA again. It is not Impact. Show is Impact. The company's TNA. The TNA Knockouts champion with belt in hand, much like it has at the Royal Rumble. But Jordan Grace returned to throw down a challenge and get the ball rolling on things. And then before we get into that, as the show went on, we got hit with a second surprise as the night closed with Trick Williams.
You got the numbers all out of order. The first and most important surprise
was first surprise.
Sexy Red.
Oh, forgot about Sexy. Well, that's a whole nother factor.
Get it sexy.
Hey,
listen. Who?
Hey,
that's why I'm wearing my red headphones for her today.
Watch the tape. Jamal, watch the tape. So Sexy Red's got things started for the night, but nonetheless, I digress. We
knew that part we knew was happening. We knew Sexy Red was going up, so that was a whole nother factor. But yes, but then to close the show, Trick Williams is out there along with Sexy Red, as you just mentioned, and out of nowhere the lights. The lights did not go out. He just got jumped out of nowhere by a debuting, or I guess invading, Ethan Page. Oh, they're all ego. Ethan Page shows up. And they even threw a little line on commentary about, doesn't he work for AE? And it quickly got cut off. So we got some surprises out of left field Tuesday night, and it really is shaking up the landscape in NXT heading into Battleground next month. So I guess let's throw this out there to you guys. What are we thinking about this? Because this feels like the forbidden door is being opened here, because it's not just Jordan Grace we're talking about. Now we got all ego Ethan Page in the mix too. So NXT and TNA clearly got something going on here.
There's a lot to talk about. I'm gonna put myself on a time cap here, do like 1 minute intervals here. But Jordan Grace's appearance is speaking a different language than Ethan Page's, because he comes from AEW and he went on Instagram and said that he's actually not signed to anyone. So that's interesting because, that means that you're bringing him in an appearance-based contract per se, or per diem, or ad hoc, should I say. And then you're going to have him in a high-profile match potentially. So that's interesting. Then he very much went online and said that I'm not signed. So, that's kind of pulling back the curtains a little bit in terms of the deal being done. And then Jordan Grace obviously speaks Forbidden Door. Not Forbidden Door the gimmick, but Forbidden Door that may actually be legitimate business here. So I'm excited for that because they're showing that the Royal Rumble really shows you that, TNA and that roster, they bust their ass hard, if not harder than what we are accustomed to each and every week on the other shows, because Jordan Grace stood in that ring and went toe to toe with all of the other juggernauts that was in there, and she had a good outing. So one may say we wanted her to come back, but who knew that this business was going to occur in the way it did? The last statement I make before come back around is I'm very, very glad that this feels like the wrestling I enjoyed back in the day. Nothing against the folks who do the work in terms of the scoops and whatnot, but the fact that this wasn't on anybody's radar just made it just that much more fun. And, we're big fans of Jordan Grace here at the Big O Belt Wrestling Podcast. So to see her not only just shine in TNA, shine in the Royal Rumble, but now coming back for more, I mean, hey, this is amazing. And we have a conversation with her when she says that WWE was not her goal. So to see her kind of doing it in her way, that may actually be the pipeline of new opportunities for folks, is damn interesting right now. But I got so much more to say, but I want to hear what the other gentleman think.
So I'll jump in here. One of the things, like you said, that was key for me, it was old school style where it's like you turned on Monday night, you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know who was going to show up. But the fact of just how Jordan just showed up, and I wasn't even watching NXT at the time. I just got an alert on my phone, and I was like, wait a minute, let me flip it right now. So just the massive jumping to a channel because of something that happened of that nature, it was like, got you interested in the product. Then when I kept watching, I was like, this got better and better and better with just the different pop-ups that you said. So I think this is really something where if NXT looks at themselves as maybe an independent place where a name may pop up, and if a reaction is right, they may be aggressive to signing, I will be in agreement to that, because sometimes that's how you can build intrigue of building a new character to the WWE fan base, even though wrestling fans are familiar with them in other platforms.
Hey, Will, the rumors were saying that Julia was going to take that spot against Roxanne. And, we know Julia's been signed, and it's only a matter of time before she's introduced. And it's interesting that they still have her pretty much on deck, ready to pull the trigger at any time, and they decide to go the Jordan route.
Yeah. I mean, Julia's clearly over in Japan trying to get Marigold off the ground, the new company that Rossi Ogawa started up over there. And I think she's got something going on with her wrist that she's getting a surgery done. So it's clearly going to be a little bit. So this may be a little bit
I didn't know that.
A little pivot they had to make where it's like, okay, we had an idea, but hey, this is interesting too. So I'm not complaining at all. All right, let's get like Crab get in here because he was next up in the queue.
So the really interesting thing about this isn't, yes, it is Jordan Grace, and yes, it is NXT. The question is there anyone on the TNA roster that would have had this much of an impact? That would have had this much of an impact in coming to WWE? And honestly, I can't say definitively so.
Oh, there's some people. There's some people. You put the Rascals together. Mustafa Ali coming back through is monumental, considering how he left, the fashion how he left, and everything he's been about since.
I don't think it's been long enough for him to leave, though. That's what I'm saying. Like,
it would be a very quick turnaround.
Yeah, that would be a very quick turnaround, and I don't think he's been away long enough for him to be that missed or that much of a surprise. Like, oh, it's Ali. Oh, okay, cool. So yes, it was the right person at the right time. The big surprise on NXT, the fact that the seeds have been planted with her being in the Royal Rumble, which was a really big shock. And we're doing this, and apparently that's obviously not the end of it, because she's clearly going to be working more with WWE. Now, here's the thing. We've seen this before when TNA and AEW did a thing. And what we thought was that the Forbidden Door was opening. What we didn't realize was that, once Moose got through, and Rich Swann got through, the door closed shut behind them. So it's hopefully, if this is a more fluid cohabitation between the two brands, great. Want to see it. Haven't seen that on this level in a very long time. If it's not, they got the right one at the right time to do it. So either way, I'm intrigued to see what happens next. And honestly, this is another pleat in the cap for NXT. They've been doing it right, ever since they got on board what their main roster is, got into that WWE level of synergy. They've been doing it right. And here's the thing is that now the question for me is, when will the NXT experience envelop the main roster? Will that ever, because we've already seen what the main roster was with Vincent and whatever. And we've obviously seen the difference between them and NXT way back when. But now that NXT is kind of spearheading what we want the future of WWE to be, when do we see that transition in the main roster? Obviously, they have a lot more, nuts and bolts to iron out and to screw down with the trials and the litigation and stuff like that. And of course, the television deals and whatever. But the future of WWE looks a hell of a lot brighter than it did last week, knowing that the door is open, not just to other talent, because they could have done this with India, with NWA, they could have done this with MOW, they could have done this with Game Changer, but the fact that they picked this moment, striking with the right iron at the right time, is a good move. And honestly, good on Shawn Michaels and the team for getting it done.
Hey, Crab, Neeson the Kid here on X is teeing this up for you, just for you personally. Is Joe Henry gonna show up in NXT?
Well, I mean, it's not wrong. And again, so now when you start to get into the who and the where and how big this expands,
let's make that like let's come around to let's make that like the third part of this, because something you touched on that I think should be like phase 2 of this. And Will, unless you want to add something.
No, y'all keep going. Keep going. We got plenty to get into here. Keep going.
So right. As I said initially, the Forbidden Door was something we were very excited for initially, till it ultimately became a gimmick. And as I said, about ROH initially, the Forbidden Door essentially became anybody who's ever built a race car knows that sometimes you buy a shell in order to, get parts off of it to get your main project fully positioned and styled and whatever else you need from off of it. And then the shell just becomes the shell and you discard it, So when you had ROH and when it went to AEW, it was essentially that. There's been no elevation of ROH since, period. The Forbidden Door gimmick was all about the elevation of Kenny Omega and everything AEW, and the bragging rights of saying we did the Forbidden Door that ultimately evolved into the PLE pay-per-view, whatever you want to call it. It did nothing for Impact. In fact, it was a mockery to Impact, because they went on there and they did these little paid commercials things that made a mockery of them. A gimmick by the rich owner to the resilient hootie that's been around for years, and that even didn't kill them, but it didn't do anything to elevate them at all. So now that we're back here with the term Forbidden Door, and I wish we could coin a better one, I'm a little bit more optimistic that business is going to be done right. Jordan getting a good showing at the Rumble. She wasn't just a gimmick or a prop that just came in there. She had the belt. She got properly labeled as who she was. She stood in there. I believe when I looked at the stats, she had like the third longest times. I think something of some rank that she obviously made.
The key thing is she got to go toe to toe with everybody in there. She wasn't made to look like lesser than anyone. And she was on par in the mix with everyone out there.
And had, if you ask me, besides Jade and Nia, she had the moment of the night with Bianca. That KOD on the apron, golly, was great.
She did.
But the real question is, how do they do this right properly? How do we ensure that business is done right this time? Jordan, and what we see for Jordan right now is monumentally big for Jordan. Obviously, it's going to elevate the NXT brand. Battleground becomes a must watch for sure if it hadn't already. That's going to be just a crazy pay-per-view. It's in the UFC Apex. It's in Vegas. You have a stat card. Now you got the TNA champion there, and then could she leave out as the double champ? Like, there's a lot of reasons to watch Battleground. But the question is now, besides TNA getting a rub, probably getting a little bit of publicity, how do we ensure that the forbidden door is open on both ways? What needs to be happen? And if you don't have a what needs to happen, what would you like to happen to ensure that this is done right? Now that we have a lessons learned from the AEW forbidden door.
So I think what needs to happen, and what I would like to happen, which is both in the same thing, I think this is a good opportunity for NXT to really be a foundational piece of how to make some of these stars that we know or the wrestling community knows that maybe not a lot of people know, how you can make them a household name to build them up on the main roster. And I'm going to give you an example. The way that they're building Carmelo Hayes right now on the main roster, I think is a great way that NXT should propel somebody that you're trying to build up to make them a household name. Case in point, Carmelo Hayes was the second or third round draft pick on the SmackDown WWE draft that just happened. He's had high profile matches to start out, which he had a decent match against Randy Orton. He had a decent match against Cody Rhodes. Now you can put him in WWE where now people know who he is and the credentials of what he works with. Now flip this with Jordynne Grace. Jordynne has something where she is, in a way of the wrestling community, a household name. We know her very well. But maybe on the WWE main roster, it's not there yet. So propel her in NXT, see what you could do in this give and take. Maybe you're intrigued and saying, oh, maybe I'll go watch TNA to see what's going on. Now you got continued eyes on her. Now, if you sign her on the WWE, now you bring her up where you could propel her on that main roster. It's like a trajectory of making somebody like a B-level movie star to making them that $20 million or whatever the market is right now for that. So that's what I would like to see when it comes to, different propelling, but it's going to take some time, but build it up in a way where you have some high profile matches where she can show how good she is and then go from there.
Really quickly, before you get in there, to the point of Jordynne being signed to TNA, is she such a hot commodity? There's no way they're going to just let her walk out the door without it either being an expiring contract, but also Gresham just signed to TNA. So you gotta think about that now there. And again, I still feel firm about her saying that WWE was not her goal, but working under the TNA brand and still working them seems a lot more feasible to what she's trying to accomplish here. Go ahead, Jamal.
Okay.
Will.
So let me just say this: like, if by some miracle, some happenstance, some larger company reached out to you, Nigeria, and said, "Hey, we like what you guys are doing. We want to bring you along, and we want to give you a slot on our network in some way." It doesn't matter that it's Ion. The fact is that it's Ion. Now, it's nothing for them to give us a couple pennies to come on there and do our thing live, 8 p.m. Eastern on a Thursday, live on Ion Network across the country. The upside for us is tenfold. The upside for them, fivefold. They get to branch it to a new audience. We get to have the largest audience we've ever had. It doesn't matter that it's Ion. And this is kind of the way TNA has benefited from this, is the fact that right now on Peacock, Jordynne Grace's face is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a win, no matter how you slice it. And that's something that we didn't see from AEW. So when you say, what should this look like to benefit both sides? This is what this looks like to benefit both sides. Now, of course, the second thing about that is, let's not make this a gimmick. Let's not make this something forced. It's not the forbidden door. It's not the, whatever. This is what should be happening. This should be the rule, not the exception, because the bottom line is that the WWE cult has worked. But obviously with AEW in town, with the renaissance of the indies that has been going on for a few years, we know that the grass isn't greener in Connecticut. A grand jury told us that. So the long and short of it is that it is beneficial to everyone as the game is currently changing. Media is changing, as we've talked about over the past months, years. The fan base is changing, as we talked about over the past months and years. The wrestling is changing. So why not reach everybody? Your audience is the universe. Not just the 18 to 49-year-olds that watch, on Raw, because those guys are going to have to get a Netflix subscription next year. So you need everybody. I don't care who you are. Nobody's too big to fail. Everybody's got to work. The NFL's got to do it. AEW's got to do it. WWE's got to do it. Everybody's got to go back to the drawing board. And if this is what this looks like, with Jordan Grace being the catalyst for that, and bringing in the TNA roster in some way, somehow, because the matches are the matches, and there's a lot of WWE talent in TNA right now. There's a lot of talent that's never made it over there. But I just need Chad Gable versus Jonathan Gresham so I can die happy.
But let me ask this, Jamal, coming right back to you on that. It's like saying, in a way, for every independent contractor that we'll call wrestlers, and for every independent TV station or network or streaming service, it's like everybody, in a way, is, let's work for ourselves now. We don't need an agent. Let's market ourselves and see how we can maximize the value on using this star. And like you said, for Jordan, it's great for her. And then the network's like, oh, we can get you as a big star. Let's propel you. And everybody's trying to get a win of that money pie that's there to grab.
But
On the contrary, more wrestlers are getting agents now all of a sudden. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah. What we're seeing, I think, is partly this. Like you were mentioning about Jordan Grace saying her destination wasn't WWE. But
the destination changed. Because her dream was at first, and then it changed because of the indies and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also she didn't walk through the same door to get it.
I'm looking at it like this. This is the chance to like get a taste of that system and get a taste of NXT without having to sign a deal to go there. Where it's like, hey, you got to be there this week. Next week, you're going to have your debut match against one of their young girls that they're trying to bring along. You're going to get your match at Battleground. So it's like you're going to get a taste of NXT, the full-on deal, working the shows, not just like getting a tryout at the Performance Center. This is like, okay, you're going to get the real deal here, get to look around, get to kick the tires without having to go through the hoops that other people would not necessarily have to go through. Now, where this gets interesting to me is, we haven't talked about the other direction now, about people going to TNA. And given the amount of people they have down there on that show, there was a scene this week during the show where Natalia was in the back with a bunch of like the new, like some of the girls I didn't even recognize. I couldn't even tell you their names because it was like they have so many.
They still have real names. That's how I knew they are.
Yeah. It's like they got these girls that they're ready to start doing stuff with. And they kind of got Natalia like kind of being like a mother hen coach to them and stuff. And it's like, there's so much they could do. We're like, okay, let's send some of these like new NXT girls down to TNA. Have them do like a little something down there just for some seasoning, just to see kind of where they stand. I mean, there's so many people there that are like new names that they could very easily send some folks down to TNA and be like, hey, do a TV taping down there.
They could, but WWE doesn't need to do that. Real quick, WWE doesn't need to do that because that would be like McDonald's letting Wendy's use their chicken sandwich. It would be good for both sides, but McDonald's doesn't have to do that. And the reason why I say that is because WWE has their system. It is what it is. What they are getting from TNA in this is the ability to get the contracted talent that they want and not have to, and it can fast track them into programs without having to go through the NXT system and having to wait a year. We've been talking about the NIL guys forever. Where have they bear fruit? We've been talking about the college kids that have come in and stuff like that, and I haven't really seen them come through in a meaningful way right now.
Isn't Obafemi from the NIL deal?
And that took him 2 years?
I don't think that. I think it took him no time once they put him on. Here's my thing. I think the best way to look at the TNA and NXT deal is the Sony and Disney deal through Marvel with Spider-Man and the MCU.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man is one of the biggest and hottest commodities in terms of superhero properties. Sony owns them. So obviously when it came down to Civil War, which should have been one of their biggest films, they wanted to make sure and ensure it was by ensuring that they got that Spider-Man deal so that he could be in the film. And obviously they renewed the deal over and over. In return, the Spider-Man movies that were I forget they were written, I think, by Marvel. I forget, but nonetheless, just for what it's worth on screen, they got members of the Avengers for each film. They got Tony Stark's in one film. They got and they got Doctor Strange in one, and so on. So, you know, it was a deal like, hey, we get Spider-Man for our films when we need him, but we'll give you one Avenger for each one. I think in this case, we're like, does Marvel actually need Spider-Man? Sure, no, but it helps them. And do Sony need Marvel? Yes, because they absolutely need to be sure that their films are written correctly and distributed right, so that they can get this, they can make money off of it. In the case of this, obviously WWE don't need TNA. However, to ensure that NXT is a destination, that people are being able to get fair and just contracts, knowing that they'll get opportunities to do all their streaming stuff that they want to be, their content creators and whatnot. They have the rights to that, which was a big signing factor. But now, hey, listen, you know, you may not be able to work the indies, but we have a working agreement with some of these other brands, such as Booker T with
Reality of
Wrestling. And also, you know, we may approve some others, but also we have TNA and so on. First of all, to your comment, well, I don't think any of the NIL people should go to TNA because they need to learn WWE TV properly. But the more seasoned vets, the people that's in the purgatory, like if Dijak or somebody had not been drafted, oh my God, you send him over to TNA. That's a banger waiting to happen somewhere. Speedball Bailey and Dijak, I mean, literally take my money. Like, rob me at gunpoint. I will give you whatever I got. Because they got ballers over in TNA. And at this point now, I think it is about kind of creating a synergy between the two of them, which should be the ultimate goal. Knowing that if you don't have somebody that's properly ready to go on the main roster, we can ladder them over to TNA and do something. Hell, go back to Tasha Key's first one, because this right here, Prince
That's the
money.
first name I thought of as far as like a hot, fresh new face. Ron Evans.
Money right here. Man, listen. Let this start. Let this open up any NXT pay-per-view, and I'm butt in seat. I ain't going nowhere. It's gonna be like the old takeover days. This one right here, instant banger, instant banger. But yeah, I think like as we talk about the exchange of talents, I think they should really be working on the synergy so that this becomes more normalized. And then again, when you have folks that are in purgatory in NXT because they didn't get drafted and they're not just showing up on the main roster doing things because we want to kind of make the draft meaningful, you can send them to TNA and then it makes sense because like, hey, we didn't have anything kind of going for him right now. Could they work here? Could they rehorn their craft here? And then obviously WWE will be selective in terms of the people they want to kind of fit into their storylines. At least that's how I think it should work.
I think that when we agree, though, is that not one of us in all of this is hoping for an invasion angle.
Not at all.
No.
It don't even be that.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, sir.
So there are many different ways to integrate, within the fold and weave guys in and out. And I'm not saying that should even happen. I don't mind both of the things be separate, but it has to just make sense. I as much as I would love to see this time of year where this person it gets watered down. And I say this as a fan of baseball. When interleague before interleague became a thing, the only way that you would see certain matchups happen is in the World Series.
Right.
And then interleague became a thing. And then you would only see that happen maybe twice a year, every 4 years. And now everybody plays everybody. Nothing matters. So that's why the weight of the Forbidden Door fell off immediately. Is because, it's a thing they're going to do every year. Well, it's not forbidden anymore. What are we doing here? So with this thing, I like the fact that it's just there's nobody for me. Oh, here I am, a person that you didn't expect. Yeah. That's going to get me every time because now we don't know who could show up at any moment. Now I have a reason to watch because the seed has been planted. We don't know if AJ Styles is going to show up in NXT and say, hey, before I go, I want to do this one thing and call out, I don't know if he's still there, Josh Alexander, but still, or something.
Yes.
Okay.
He's there.
But still, the idea is that would be crazy to happen on NXT. I mean, or whatever it would be. But the bottom line is that there's so many different ways to do. Just please don't give us another invasion angle.
Will, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think this deal is more about? And man, this is kind of a reach. Thinking about it, you think this deal is more about Shawn Michaels and his proactiveness, or Scott D'Amore being removed from Impact TNA?
I'm looking at it as, obviously this deal doesn't happen unless WWE is pushing that they want it. For some reason, I'm guessing this is part of like more so not so much Shawn Michaels, but I'm thinking it's more Triple H, because we're hearing him talk about, do stuff in Japan.
I agree
with Rossi Ogawa and all this. So there's clearly a mindset going on of they're willing to work with select partners that they're interested in working with. And clearly these conversations have been going on for a while, and we're just now getting to the point of, okay, they're starting to bear fruit. Stuff is starting to happen. Much like how, they would do the call-ups before. It's like, I think they're being very careful about doing things at very specific times where it fits into things. And here it is, it's the beginning of summer. There's not, SummerSlam's not till August. We got these few months here where it's like, okay, dude, spice things up, throw something different into the mix and see what happens here. That's my personal opinion. Looking at the clock, we should probably stop for halftime real quick. But there's more to talk about here. We got to keep this conversation
because
going.
I agree with you 100%.
I got a question when we come back from the second half I want to throw out there. So let's hit halftime real quick, and then we'll come back, and we're going to keep this going because there is a lot of meat on the bone here with NXT and TNA and what they got going on. So stay with us, folks. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. We'll be back right after this.
A little birdie told me, everybody, that you may be interested in doing some sponsorship and advertising opportunities with us here at Big Gold Belt Media. You know what? You might as well, because we are the golden standard for all of your media needs. Why would you want to go anywhere else? Besides, all of your pre-roll ads, your mid-roll ads, as well as your on-air reads are going to be done by me, Damian G. Yeah, professional broadcaster, Damian G. We do all types of social media promotions. That means your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, and your business website all get shouted out on our network here at Big Gold Belt Media, where we cover wrestling, movies, comics, and more. And you can find out more information and make those inquiries, kids, because, limited time offer here at biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com. Again, that is biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com. Why would you want to go anywhere else? I wouldn't. Well, I work here, but I still wouldn't even if I didn't. So again, Big Gold Belt Media for all your sponsorship and advertising opportunities, your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, all of your social media platforms, as well as any business website you want us to promote on our show. biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com, and let them know Damon G sent you.
Thanks for staying with us, folks. Back for our second half here tonight on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. We're going to keep this conversation going about NXT and TNA because there is a lot going on here. So I said I had a question for y'all before we went to break. I'll throw it out here right now. So here's the thing that pops in my head looking at this Jordynne Grace and Roxanne Perez match. Do you go all the way with this? Do you have Jordynne come in and at Battleground, she wins the NXT women's title and make her a double champ and really kind of pedal to the metal on this and really shake things up?
So I'll start. I'll say I don't see why not, but don't make it a gimmick, right? Because we had this going back, let's say, with CM Punk, John Cena, where it became a gimmick. Like if he would take this belt, go to another wrestling promotion with it because he was having a contract dispute. To me, make this about wrestling. Make this about like legit. She is a TNA performer that literally has the NXT women's title. And I think when you do that in a way that makes it about wrestling, you made a great point earlier with which I agree. I think Triple H fingers has all over this when you're talking about how this networking and being very strategic about certain wrestlers that he'll use Shawn Michaels to say, hey, let's make this work on NXT because I think this could be great. And the perfect timing of this, beginning of summer, it's really not anything that's going on right now in the world of sports and entertainment. So let's just see how this works in teaser, because this may be like an annual summer-ish time thing that you want to do to put butts in seats or to try to have people come to your shows, even though we're seeing a lot of international shows going right now with NXT and WWE. make it happen. And I say go all the way with it, but don't make it a gimmick.
So the short answer to your question is no. I don't necessarily need either side to be that integrated. I think that there's a lot of feeling out process, right now. And also, more importantly, if you're TNA, well, where's their reciprocity? Who's coming from NXT to show up on TNA to give people a thing to watch then? And also, I think that with Battleground being when? A month?
2 weeks, I think.
Oh, it's closer than I thought.
It's soon. It's not
Right.
next weekend.
Yeah, I knew it was at June. I thought it was at the end, but still, with Battle, being June 9th, the idea is we're too early in the game for that. So I don't mind it being, champion versus champion. I don't necessarily like the idea that that Roxanne would go into TNA as, we don't need that right now. And also, it doesn't really seem that WWE is willing to send people to TNA, as this match is only for the Women's Championship in NXT. So there's no harm, no foul if Jordynne Grace doesn't win. If she does win, then that's a big look for TNA, bringing the belt back to down there. But nah, I don't need it right now. I just need a good match right now.
So Jordan still got the match, which is going to take place next week against Stevie Turner. So, she's not. This isn't so much of a one-off here in terms of her.
Next week is like her debut showcase, almost.
Yeah, but I think, like, for the sake of continuity here, I mean, the outing at the Royal Rumble has to speak for something. And she was only eliminated by what you can consider one of the best wrestlers on the WWE brand in Bianca Belair. So, for what it's worth, Jade Cargill's interest in the Royal Rumble was against Nia Jax, which made a statement, because you're like, well, if you eliminated Nia, in the sense of our anime lovers out there, you're like, okay, that assess where her power level is at, where her power set is at. So I think for what we've seen in terms of muscle, the speed, athleticism that Jordan put on in the ring, I think that the match against Roxanne can't just be a wash, for one. And even in a good showing, I think the way they have to book the match is that we truly have to be compelled that this can go either way. Right. Now, if they do decide to go the other way and let it go back to Impact, I would imagine that you're not just running back a rematch here. I think that's what you're trying to avoid, Marcellus. But if they do, though, I mean, what does that do for viewerships for Impact? And what, Slammiversary is coming up? All eyes are
You're
set
running
to
back
watch.
at Slammiversary. Maybe
And
that's
all
the goal
eyes are
here.
set.
TNA's
All eyes
biggest
are
show
set.
of the
Yeah. And I call it for what it's worth. I mean, Roxanne was somebody you easily say will get drafted. She didn't get drafted, so this kind of makes sense. She's a prime example of the person's like, she's the champion. I never thought she should have had to win it back. But if she didn't win it back, I thought she wasn't going to win it back, because I thought for sure she was going to the main roster. But now she's here. It's kind of like, you're in Jada Gargano's position. You kind of already did it all at this rate. So now what for this person? How do we keep this person interested that they clearly are invested into? She's ready. She's young, but she's ready. So why not give her a little stir the pot here and have her do some work with another promotion with their top talent and so on? So I think it is a matter of perfect. I mean, the stars align. Maybe Julia being injured was another thing, but also will say, instead of it being Triple H just pulling the string, I will go one higher. I would say that TKO was a little interested in terms of the booking at the UFC Apex Arena. Vegas is obviously their home turf. Let's ensure that this is one of the biggest shows of the year.
It needs a little something extra than just a regular NXT show.
What can we do? And if that person that walked through the door to say, what can we do, was Triple H, then so be it. But I definitely think there had to be a message across the board about what could we do to spice this up just a little bit more? And this absolutely makes it count. We ain't talking about ego at all. but I tell you this, if he had a sign, I instantly thought by what happened earlier in the night, I said I need the Ego Page versus Josh Alexander match right now. The old tag team that he went to go do his thing, and Josh ended up running Impact for all the time till they ultimately rebranded to TNA. You know, those were the North was one of the best tag teams of that year. And of some time, and the fact that they broke up, I mean, that's a match with the chemistry and the story behind it, and one
But
that
this though, you know where the next NXT pay-per-view is going to be? Money in the Bank weekend.
oh boy, Toronto.
There you go.
Oh boy,
that's in July.
Yeah.
So if that's a thing, I believe it's called Heat Wave. Money in the Bank weekend in Toronto.
That's a great continuity. That's a great continuity. That's a great. I mean, once again, not a storyline per se, but you have back-to-back events.
But it makes sense though. It all comes together. It makes sense.
It makes sense.
Ethan Page, hometown show at the NXT pay-per-view in Toronto. He's from Hamilton, an hour down the road. It absolutely makes sense. And then as the door is open with Jordan Grace, however the match goes down, it goes down. But the point is that it creates interest on both sides. Mm-hmm. WWE gets the ready-made talent that they want and don't have to guess about whether the NIL deal is going to work. They know what they're getting, whether it's Jordan or Masha or whoever else. It's
plug and play. It's ready to go.
Exactly. They know what they know what they're getting already. But Impact gets the exposure. Everybody wins. And then, of course, if they do a thing and they bring people into Impact, but now the question is, because Impact is going through a change at the top as well, obviously it seems that WWE is using them as their puppet government, and how, they're going to try to, Manuel Noriega them into.
Do you feel that way already?
Yeah.
I don't.
Because it's only up for Impact to get in bed with WWE. It's only up. Why wouldn't it?
It's only up as long as it's allowed to be up. We could say the same thing about
that's set up for Impact to cut the cord, though. That's on WWE. They have power in this.
And sure, they may not have leverage besides the talent, but again, I think the synergy. I also think the interest of the talent. I also think it draws interest in terms of like contracts, knowing that these are possibilities. I mean, my thing is that it has to be fair business on both sides. As fans, we want to see this work on both playing fields, on both turfs. The business, we need to see things that make business sense. Again, there's no mockery to the Impact brand. That's the first thing that needs to be off the table,
right?
Because they should not be looked at as inferior brand under NXT.
Which is why they're dealing with NXT and not Raw, SmackDown.
Exactly, and that's more or less where the playing ground it is. But I mean, God damn it, if you ain't looking at NXT right now as a third brand legitimately, although they running it as a structure because there's attachments to the NIL and Performance Center, but you look at NXT as a third brand right now, you're like, they're doing big things. All three brands are doing big things, and
doing it their own way. Raw doesn't look like SmackDown, doesn't look like NXT. They're doing it their own way.
Yeah, that was one of the big things I liked about it, is that they're doing this on NXT, so it's a hook specifically just for that show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And let's call it what it is. TNA's doing big things right now. Went through a rebranding at the top of the year, putting on banger matches, signing big names. I mean, having Speedball and Jonathan Gresham and Josh Alexander as the top of your roster there, I'm going to say that's a win. And then now being able to work the business with WWE, that's a big deal to me. Along with the other different folks that they've been working with. So, I
just need them to tour. I mean, they got to get out of whatever broom closet that they're in and bring the product to the people. They can't like operate. They can't run shows behind a Waffle House anymore. TNA, let's get it together. I mean, obviously AEWs make the small venue business work to a degree, but you can't have. It doesn't matter what they're doing if the people can't see it. The television deal has always been a thing, so they got to tour. They got to bring the show on the road to the people.
I think back to remember when this deal happened the first time with Impact and AEW. The number one thing we kept talking about every week on here, we were like, when's this going to go beyond Kenny Omega? When's this going to involve the knockouts? That was the big thing we wanted, was something with the knockouts. And
because that was the biggest hang up with AEW. That was the spot where because at the time, and I would argue that it could still be true today. Impact had the best women's roster in North America.
Mhm. It's been their bread and butter for ages.
Right. And now, and hell, actually, I will officially submit that and say that is the case because Jordan Grace is on NXT. Like, that's just what it is. So with that said, and that's AEW's Achilles heel at the time, and I would say that still is. That's where the bread is buttered. That's what we need. No, it didn't happen. We got Kenny Omega dragging Rich Swan's carcass for 35 minutes. God damn. Okay, we got Moose at Daly's place. Okay.
Anything else we want to talk about? We spent some time on this one. This is
Ethan Page. I mean, Ethan Page.
Oh, yeah,
obviously,
okay. Yeah.
The question is, do you actually want to debut him on that night? Should they have saved him for another week where he gets his own show?
Keep that fire brewing. Keep that fire brewing.
I think they were banking on the idea that they were getting extra viewers because they pushed Sexy Red being on there. So they were like, "Hell, we're gonna."
And she held her own. Truth be told, she held her own on that show.
No bias. She definitely did.
As a valet, or whatever you want to call it, she did. Like she fit perfectly. Like she knew what her role is and get over.
She's gonna be a Battleground hosting the show.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I did not hear of this, but so I did pull up the clip of her, and honestly, and I hate to say it, she might be a better Monet as a CEO.
Oh, don't let that fan base hear that.
I don't know. Maybe Monet needs an ice cream tattoo on her cheek. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Listen. I gotta be virtually honest here. She looked very, very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Very comfortable. And you can say all you want about her being on tour. And if y'all ain't know, she just recently had a baby too. And
on the stage,
she looks like she belongs, and let's just call it what it is. Having a celebrity guest appearance, 2 sign-ins, really
a contemporary. And you can argue about the merits of Sexy Red. That's not what we're here for. I don't give a shit that she's popular. That's on y'all. But the fact is that NXT is striking while the iron's hot. They're getting contemporary, popular guests right now. They're not dragging out Bob Barker just because he did a thing 20 years ago. They're getting people in the moment today.
Yeah.
And that's, kudos to the team for doing that, for making that happen.
Mm-hmm. So, they hit it all to brew even more interest into the pay-per-view. So let's end this discussion on one question, because we all talked a lot. I know you're hosting. What is the match that needs to happen between the two brands? When, where, and how?
Ooh. I mean, as far as any of the guys went, like our buddy Toxic was saying earlier, Javon Evans is jumping out at me as like the name to do something with. And he'd plug in so perfectly, like with those X Division folks over an Impact. His style is totally X Division style. So now, who would be you mentioned Leo? They mentioned Leon Slater earlier. That'd be a hell of a deal.
Crazy.
Trying to think who else is over there these days. That'd be an interesting matchup.
I
mean, you have Ace Austin. You have
Chris Bay. You can do a Rascals reunion, or you're talking about
a Rascal reunion is right there on the plate for them. Yeah,
there's a lot of options. So
yeah,
man, I don't know.
You have Steve Macklin there. You have some names on the men's. Moose is there. Eddie Edwards.
Moose is there. Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the person who really needs it, because he's been very much Mr. TNA, and at one point, I thought he had like unlimited potential to go to any roster. Obviously, he has the physique, he has the lineage from being in the NFL that they love to tell that story. But we haven't seen him work outside of TNA. He did the Indies for a very, very little time. Shout out to that promotion in Jersey that had all that money that disappeared. I would like to see him. I would like to see how he can hang with some of the WWE guys. I think that would be something of interest of just pure wrestling, And then obviously you have Gresham. That's right there. Gresham in the WWE ring is pretty much going to make me empty out the bank if I had 24-hour notice to get to wherever that's going to happen to see that in person. So but I don't know.
Well, out of everybody that you name, I'm going to name the people that you didn't name, and that's the Knockouts division. Flat out plug in most of those women, but the big ones obviously being Rosemary. I would love to see Tasha Steelz in NXT. I will obviously Jordan Grace is there. Jessica Havoc would be a good look. Killer Kelly would be fun.
Masha's sitting right there.
Masha's right there. Zia Brookside is right there. Sue Young is right there. That would be really, really interesting to see any of those people. And I'm sure there's a bunch more that I'm forgetting. But also, I mean, you talk about like low-key Impact doing big things. Apparently, Ziggler is like the AAA champion in TNA.
Yep.
Which is wild. And obviously, with the work that Matt Cardona has been doing has been a big thing across the Indies. So yeah, it's not like they've been quietly doing things. It's just that they need the better exposure. And the fact that Jordan Grace's face is on the Peacock front page when you click on WWE right now is that exposure. The fact that we spent 50 minutes talking about an NXT show and we haven't talked about the wrestling, we talked about the implications. Is a big deal. This is what Impact needs. Now they got to take this newfound exposure and run with it.
Her being on the Peacock thing is the added bonus because WWE, I'm sure, had nothing to do with that. I'm sure that they decide what they're going to do.
No, it's probably just the thing from the show. It's the biggest thing that happened on the show. So clearly, and it happened last night. So yes,
comments,
the week of the show, it should be the thing. What makes sense. It ain't even Page, but that should be a thing. But the fact that has to happen is what it is, and I think that's a good look for Impact. So they get the exposure. WWE gets the talent. And the thing and the difference is, and this is Triple H's influence. When Vince did it, he just bull rushed everybody, signed everybody to a contract, and just hit them in the
figure it out later. Yeah,
we'll figure it out later. But we just need y'all so that nobody else can do it. And we saw what that did to European wrestling. We saw what happened in Mexico when they did that. We saw despite signings, despite AEW, and it didn't work. And then we had Black Trash Bag Friday, a couple years ago, and now it's the synergy. It's the synergy that happens, and we have people working with people, and this is the start. And I hope that this is a start to a bigger thing. But the fact is that we're not talking about the competition between Impact and NXT. We're talking about how we can bring them both together, and that's a much bigger deal than what Vince did, and a much bigger thing than what Tony Khan did.
All right.
I like it.
All right. We got about 8 minutes left. So we are going to barn burn through what we got left here. So I'm going to hit this quick and dirty here from the shows from last weekend. All right. We got King Gunther. We got Queen Nia. What do we think about that? Go.
I think both made the right choices. It was just a logical sense.
You will never hear me say anything bad about Nia Jax, ever.
You were pulling for her to get the win last week, so I knew that had to go good for you.
Yeah, I like it too, and it's good to see her have that moment, emotional, and instantly snap back into full blown heel mode. But hey, we gotta talk about her return since she left WWE. It has been top tier, and
you've been putting in the work, no doubt.
Putting in the work. She's easily one of my favorite people, one of my favorite people I've ever interviewed. She still owes me some Terramana because she doesn't drink, but good old cousin sending that her way, and I do drink, so go ahead and hit me up now. We made good on that, but it's a very special moment for her and
future Knockouts champion.
Might be true though. It might be true,
but dude, I mean, I can say that because it's possible now.
It's possible. It might be true.
But see, let's keep the continuity here. They're doing business with NXT. They're not just on all the rosters, but if somebody shows up in the other roster, then I mean, this conversation changes completely.
But are you telling me that it's impossible for Nia or Natalya to show up in NXT again?
Natalya needs to show up on Impact.
I'm just saying
that needs to happen because that's somebody who needs something going on. I mean, the work in NXT was doing her benefit. So, but yeah, good choices for the winners here. I'll say that.
Yeah. Our future SummerSlam title matches. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. All right, and we also had AEW Double or Nothing last weekend. Now, all I saw of that was Mercedes and Willow, which big return match. We talked a lot about, how it was imperative that Mercedes have a good showing. I thought she held up her end of things. I thought it was a heck of a match until the finish. I'm not crazy about that damn finish that she's been using. I think she should just go back to the bank statement or something else that works better, because that move is very tricky to pull off. That little flipping thing she does off her back, and I don't know. She's only hit it good a couple times. So I thought it made for a flat finish. And my other takeaway from that match was, when it was all said and done, I was much more curious about Willow and Chris Statlander than Mercedes being champ. And I'm not sure that's necessarily what they wanted to have happen there, but that was my thoughts on the one thing I saw off a Double or Nothing.
That was the only match I cared about. It was the only match I did see. I have absolutely zero interest in Chris Statlander. I think that Mercedes is fine, but Willow is the future. And I think the further that they get on with Willow to becoming the women's champion before all of the other people, Hayter, Dr. Baker, before they come back, maybe take Conti if she gets back, maybe Penelope Ford if she gets back, before the women's roster gets a little bit more full, this is Willow's moment, and I think they should run with that.
I'll just say this. Adam Copeland needs to stop wrestling. I'm tired of him getting hurt every time he wrestles. Just stop it.
Well, he ain't going to be wrestling for a while at this point.
Yeah, because of broken tibia and everything. Every time he steps in the ring, goes back to he's 25 and gets hurt.
Pray for Willow. Because I know you're interested about what happens next, but you just worked a championship match against arguably their biggest talent, and you're already off that picture. You're like removed from that picture.
Yeah, they had the side project warmed up. The side quest was waiting for
exactly.
Right
if you lose the Super Bowl, you're probably still in the top 5 power ranking.
Yeah,
she lost her match, and you're just like, man, I hope they make the playoffs next year. Like, it should not be that way. For all the momentum that Willow's built, as every reservation I had and hesitation I had last week, I now have, we come to that point of my biggest fears is what now? So organic of a build, so likable of a character, so likable as a wrestler, only been getting better and better. The Chris Statlander is not a payoff. That's not anything of interest. In fact, this is a wild take. This benefits Stokely more than anybody.
Yeah,
because it wasn't even part of this feud.
And it wasn't even what we were thinking last week, where it was like, oh, they're going to turn on her and they're going to join up with Mercedes as like her, her rest of her squad, the rest of her corporation. It ain't even that.
This to me, this screams like, hey, we signed you and we got to give you everything you want. So obviously we know that she wants to work the people in Japan, and instantly she wins and goes right to Forbidden Door. So, and now although she's facing the New Japan Strong champion, I guess it's still it's still within the clause of the contract, but I don't like it for Willow, man. I just don't. Hell, you know what? From everything that's happening right now with NXT and TNA, this makes a destination for both of those locations now. So instead of going to the Purgatory of Honor, because you go there, that you won't be seen, you won't be found. It don't even matter, because where's the thing? I know she's hurt, but you might have missed some of the best matches of all of her career because it was behind the paywall of honor, the Purgatory of Honor, shall I say. But now you could go to TNA and then potentially do something that ultimately lands you on NXT television and many other places. So sounds like a destination place for people to go to, one or the other,
Yeah. God damn it. Well, I mean, unfortunately, you're not wrong. And this is, I don't know, AEW has some interesting things that they need to figure out. The ratings came out. They were in the, high 700,000s. Well, what's your excuse now? No basketball, not a
I actually watched last night. I watched last night for a while. First time in a while.
Right. So, and of course, this is coming off of the pay-per-view.
Yep.
So, right. So what's the excuse now? Like,
and Mercedes had a match too.
Right. So what is it now? And that's kind of what it is. Where they gotta figure something out. And it's not just us, being pessimistic. The ratings reflect it. The attendance reflects it. It's that they need something.
Yep.
They need that sizzle, and it can't just be the pay-per-view. They can't be TNA. A hot pay-per-view every couple months, and then we don't hear from you until the next hot pay-per-view. They gotta get something going.
You know what? Fuck it, book it. Get Cheetan on this Forbidden Door. If we're gonna go crazy, let's do it.
Oh well, yeah. I mean that's easy. That's you talk about matches. That's easy. That's real easy. If they want to do it, Andreza Giant Panda, yeah, absolutely, get it done. Yeah,
the possibilities are endless in 2024, as we are quickly discovering.
Exactly.
Yes.
Anything else before we wrap it up? We're at our hour, folks.
Oh, I mean, I will say also too, like let's be frank that all the new signees got championships now. So is that the draw to the brand that we automatically invest in you? Good for the signees, but it sucks for everybody who's been there in terms of building this foundation of a place in AEW. There's people, there's the blood, sweat, tears. The people through the pandemic's already been, sent out the door. And now it seems like if we're not seeing you on television, your contract is probably up and you're instantly up. No 90-day clause, so you automatically can go somewhere else. So we can start looking at it in a way that we had not typically looked at AEW. If you haven't seen your favorite wrestler on television in a while, they may show up on NXT and TNA, and that's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, but unfortunately, AEW seems to be doing the thing that WWE, would do, where they would have a hot hand, they would ride it until it got cold, and then not have a plan B. And which is why it was refreshing to see so many people, or those that went, show up on NXT and then kind of reinvigorate their career, at least for the months that they were there. And if that still led to you leaving, then it led to you leaving because, Ziggler left, Mustafa Ali left. Okay, cool. It's not the end of the world to be stuck to with one horse. But with AEW, and this is where Dark was a great concept. It doesn't have to mean anything. We just need visibility. And right now, if you're not in one of the major storylines, where are you? The paywall of honor? Well, we don't know unless you pay them. So that ain't it. Visibility isn't sticking you behind a paywall of $10 to $15 a month, whatever it is. So they need that visibility, which is shocking to say that they have 5 hours of content and we still need visibility. Wow. So, but AEW's going to figure that out. They'll be all right.
There you go. The story that we will always be talking about week to week here on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. All right. We had a busy damn hour tonight. This was a packed show. So, all right. Let's see. Someone's playing some music. Where's the music coming from?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm not playing the outro yet. What the heck?
I don't know. I think that popped on my phone. I accidentally hit something. My bad. That's me.
Like we jamming out here.
Had an R-Truth moment. Had an R-Truth moment. My bad.
All right, folks. Every Thursday night, 8 p.m., we are here streaming on X, YouTube, Twitch, you name it, and of course at biggoldbelt.com/live. With the stream. Next day, podcast version drops on all your favorite podcast platforms. So if you're just looking for the audio, you can get that too. On social media, it's at Big Gold Belt across the board on all the social media. And of course, the website, biggoldbelt.com. I was jumping ahead to that one there. Of course, hit that subscribe button if you're on the social media right now, because the show, you'll get the notifications when the show goes live, and all that good stuff on YouTube and all that. So, am I forgetting anything else? I don't think I am. We've had a busy night tonight. Yeah, I guess no. No. All right. That's everything. Next Thursday, we'll be back, folks, talking the weekend wrestling. Stay safe, and we will talk to you then. Laters.
All I really need, that